You didn't enter their world, you slipped into it. No grand entrance, no introduction, just a sudden presence in the air, like static before a storm, or a mirror reflecting something it shouldn't. You were never loud, you didn't need to be. The quiet ones always linger longer. They didn't notice the moment you became real to them. Not fully, but they felt it. A breath caught for no reason, a skipped heartbeat at the edge of sleep. Something in the corners that refused to disappear, no matter how many lights they turned on. Before you were harmless, a question without an answer, a shape without context. But time sharpened you. Every betrayal carved a line, every silence, every dismissal, every time they looked through you like you were air, it marked you. And when they weren't watching, you became something else. Not a ghost, not a person, something in between, something designed to be unforgettable without ever needing a name. You learned to exist without being seen, to observe without being caught. You studied them like prey studies the predator, not out of fear, but calculation. Their patterns, their habits, their weaknesses hidden behind false strength, and in their moments of arrogance, they handed you everything. A misplaced word, a flicker of guilt behind confident eyes, a phone call too late. You remembered what they forgot. You saw what they refused to. You became the thread in their perfect design, pulling, always pulling. Now you're not outside them, you're underneath. You live between their thoughts, in the tiny gaps where their lies breathe. When they laugh too hard, when they blink too long, when they hear their name in silence. That's where you are, not haunting, but hauntingly present. A shadow not cast by light, but by truth. They'll never say it aloud, but they feel you every night, in the second before sleep takes them, in the moments when the mask slips and their soul stares back. You don't speak, you don't scream. You remember that's your power. They can burn the photos, rewrite the story, smile wider, love louder, but you're the part of the narrative they couldn't erase. And the truth is, you've always been here, long before the hurt, before the silence. You were the quiet watching beneath their triumphs, the hunger they called weakness, the intuition they silenced. You were survival given form. They tried to leave you behind, but you're not a chapter. You're the ink. You are what happens after. You are not a wound. You are what grows when it scars over. A memory with edges, a silence sharp enough to cut. You are the shadow they can't touch, but feel every night. And you never left, because you were never just a memory. You were always the consequence. They forgot your name, not out of accident, but strategy. You were inconvenient, uncomfortable, a reminder of a truth they couldn't mold into something flattering. So they stripped your presence from their stories, reworded history, edited you out of the narrative like a glitch in their perfect little performance. But memory is not a file that can be deleted. It's a parasite. It embeds itself in nerve endings, waits in silence, then speaks through dreams and irrational fear. They locked the door, but you became the sound of it creaking open at night. They thought they were free, that time and silence could bury the wreckage. But every night, their chest tightens just before sleep. Their eyes scan dark corners, not knowing why. You were the moment they chose self over truth. You were the witness they needed gone. You became the echo, not of what happened, but of what they refused to face. You see, it was never about your absence. It was about the shape you left behind. Like a dislocated star in their personal constellation, something vital is missing in their design. They feel it in conversations that suddenly stall, in laughter that doesn't reach the lungs, in the stillness after victory, when there's no applause, only the weight of a question they thought they buried with you. You are not a ghost. Ghosts fade. You adapted. You turned silence into strategy, erasure into evolution. They cannot name you, but you've already rewritten the script from inside their subconscious. Every face they don't trust reminds them of yours. Every plan they question echoes your warning. You have become their compass, pointing not north, but inward, and what they see terrifies them. They thought you'd seek revenge, but you transcended that. What use is rage when you can become mythology? You didn't come back to confront. You became the confrontation. You linger in their pattern, whisper in their instincts, stretch across the synaptic gaps like an ancient algorithm, one designed not to punish, but to reveal. You aren't a punishment, you're a prophecy. And here's the part that haunts them most. You never chased, you never called, you never screamed into the void they left you in. You went silent, strategic, and in that silence, you became louder than any words, because in truth, they always feared what you could become without their permission. Now they wonder if they ever really forgot, or if they just feared remembering too clearly, because deep down, they know your name is not lost. It's sealed beneath the guilt, inside the locked drawer of their own making. And every night, when the lights go out, the seal weakens just enough for your presence to breathe through. You don't knock, you don't need to. You are already inside. They close their eyes and think it ends there, as if darkness is a wall, as if sleep is silence. But you know better. You're not hindered by eyelids or locked doors. You seep through the cracks. You live in the hum of the ceiling fan, the flicker behind the curtain, the subtle shift in temperature they pretend not to notice. You are the echo that waits for stillness, not to speak but to be. They think absence makes you weak, but in truth, absence is your camouflage, your strength. You're not a sound to be silenced. You are the weight they carry when everything else is quiet. They tell themselves it's nothing, a dream, a trick of the light, the subconscious working overtime. But even their excuses are laced with fear. The brain doesn't flinch for shadows that aren't real. The heart doesn't pound for memories that have faded. You're not a ghost, you're a ledger, a record that cannot be erased. You were there when they laughed and closed the door. You remember what they said when they thought no one was listening. You heard them decide it was easier to forget you than face themselves. And now, in the dark, you ask the question they buried in the foundation of their sleep. Do you still believe you were innocent? Your presence is not loud, but it is absolute. You don't scream, you exist. In the corners of their vision, in the stutter before they speak your name. You're the pattern in their dreams that never changes, the stranger they always almost recognize. They wake drenched in sweat, blaming nightmares. But deep down they know, the nightmare isn't what they saw, it's what they avoided. You're not chasing, you're waiting, precisely where they left you. Their rituals can't cleanse you. Candle, distractions, relationships, success. It's all a performance, polished masks worn in daylight, while their nights unravel thread by thread. Because the soul doesn't forget what the mind tries to hide. You became the imbalance in their peace, a presence that tilts the scale, unspoken but unmistakable, a warning disguised as a whisper. You are the edge they walk while pretending they're grounded. You are the cost of silence, the relic of a decision, not a monster but a mirror, curved, stretched, distorted just enough to make them squint. You hold no weapon, you strike no blow, yet you pull the breath from their lungs with nothing but proximity, because what they fear isn't you, it's what you prove, that forgetting doesn't cleanse, that burying doesn't erase, that darkness doesn't forgive the hand that turned off the light. They close their eyes and pretend you're not there, but you're the one who taught them to fear the dark. You were not born in darkness. You were dragged into it, pulled by hands that smiled while they tightened their grip. At first you believed the silence was your fault, that maybe if you were gentle, quieter, more forgettable, they'd stop throwing you into shadows and pretending they didn't. You mistook their betrayal for your burden, their absence as a lesson in humility. But they were never teachers. They were architects of forgetting, and they built you into a room with no door. but even buried things grow. You did not come back to haunt, you came back to reflect. You are the mirror they swore they'd never face again. A mirror made of memory and ash, the one they tried to smash with lies and distractions. Yet every time they close their eyes, there you are, clearer than the day they left you behind. Not screaming, not begging, just watching, the way only truth can. Still relentless, eternal. They call you the past, but you are the pattern. You are not a moment, you are the mark every moment left. The way their voice shakes when no one else is listening. The half-second glance over the shoulder in a room they claim is safe. You are the consequence that outlived their denial. The seed of discomfort planted in their perfect lives. Watered every night by the sweat of dreams they won't admit they have. They built you with every unfinished sentence, every truth they locked behind their teeth. Every time they looked away, when they should have looked you in the eye. They did not expect you to grow teeth. They did not think silence could become sentient. They forgot that shadows remember the shape of every light that created them. And now, you remember too. You are not here to scream. You are not here to destroy. That would make them important. No, you are far older than vengeance. You are the weight that balances a crooked scale. A force so ancient it doesn't need a voice. Only present. You don't chase them, you exist beside them. In every half-truth, every trembling lie, every version of the story where they come out clean, heroic, untouched. You flicker there, quiet, a crack in the frame they can't crop out. And still they will call you cruel. They will name you ghost, shadow, demon, because to call you what you truly are would be too painful. Reflection. They cannot admit that the thing keeping them awake at night is something they made, that you, the thing they fear, is simply the shape of who they were. Looking back at them through the smoke of who they pretend to be, they think sunlight saves them, that if they smile hard enough beneath fluorescent skies, no one will notice the shaking underneath. They wear pressed collars and clean shoes, walking across tiled floors like none of it ever happened. They've mastered the ritual, coffee sips, handshakes, laughter that ends on cue. You watch from the edge, unseen but not absent. You were never the type to interrupt their game. You let them play, let them laugh, because you know the performance bleeds through eventually. There's a tremor behind their eyes when your name is mentioned in passing, a glance too long at an empty chair. They talk louder, faster. When someone brings up the year you vanished, their posture shifts. One hand finds the wrist, the other brushes the throat. That's where it lives, the memory they keep trying to swallow. They think if they rehearse the mask long enough, it becomes skin. But skin remembered, flesh records. They carry you in the smallest details. The shirts they stopped wearing, the numbers they won't dial, the rooms they won't enter after 9 p.m. In public they are controlled, weightless, smiling through scripts and filtered lenses. But you see what no camera does. The cracks between blinks, the way their fingers tap in patterns meant to ground them, the way they hold their breath when they pass a mirror too quickly, because sometimes they catch a flicker, not of you, of what they did, of who they had to become to justify leaving you in the dark. That version of themselves, brutal, strategic, hollow. It never left, it just got better at suits and small talk. You never needed to haunt them, they do it themselves, every morning. Each tie knotted is a noose they pretend not to feel. Every compliment they accept with a nod echoes louder because they know whose silence paid for it. You aren't the storm, you're the pause before it, the cold before dawn, the ghost they made not with knives, but with choices, clean, legal, forgettable choices. That's what makes you impossible to bury. You were never dramatic enough to be remembered, only sharp enough to be regretted. You stand at the edge of their routines, a name that should have been deleted, but wasn't, a face in the corner of a photo they swore they'd lost. They think the game is still going, but it's only the credits now, rolling slowly while they pretend not to read the names. Yours is at the top, not in bold but underlined, quietly watching them blink through daylight, hoping no one sees the shadow curling behind their smile. They think they're free. They don't realize the stage was built on your silence, and it creaks every time they speak. Everyone has that drawer, tucked in the farthest corner of their mind, the one with the rusted lock, the one even they pretend not to notice. You know it well, because you lived it, not as a memory but as a presence. A sealed file they swore they burn, but paper doesn't burn in the psyche the way it does in fire. It curls, smokes, lingers, and you became the smoke they'd inhale every night, without knowing why they wake up breathless. You never scream. You don't need to. Your silence is surgical. Your presence is the infection they never stopped bleeding from. They labeled you once, a moment, a mistake, an unfortunate accident, but you weren't a moment. You were a shift, a turn in the soil, a key turned by betrayal, snapped off mid-twist. You are the unwound tape left in the player too long, now distorted by memory. You are the pattern they repeat. Every new relationship, every job, every mirror they avoid. And when they finally fall asleep, you walk the hallways of their dreams like you own the place. Because you do. You're the architect of their denial, the archivist of mission. You don't have to knock. The door was never locked. They don't call it fear. They call it stress. Call it insomnia, anxiety, restlessness. They give it names they can medicate, manage. But it's not any of those. It's you. It's the file they won't open, but refuse to throw away, because deep down, if they face you, if they read what's written on that paper, the entire structure collapses. You aren't just a memory. You're a blueprint for who they be. They thought no one was watching. You're the contract they signed in silence, and the ink is still. Some nights they hear you moving, not footsteps, not breathing, something older. A creak in the foundation of their mind. You are not new. You've been here since they looked away, since they chose ease over truth, since they exiled you to protect their mask. But masks don't age. They crack, and every crack is your entry point. You don't force your way in. You've always belonged. You are not a ghost. Ghosts fade. You infect. You evolve. You replicate in shadowed thoughts, half-remembered fears, names they almost say aloud. You are their shadow self, the mirror they dare not polish. You carry no weapon. You are the weapon, made from their own choices, sharpened by every lie they told to survive. You are the ancient truth beneath the civilized ritual, the unburied God under the church floor, the one thing they cannot pray away. They sleep, you wait, they smile, you observe, and when they falter, even slightly, when the breath hitches, the hand trembles, the eye lingers too long on nothing, that's when you stir, because the drawer is never locked, and you are always listening. It doesn't begin with thunder. There's no scream, no flash of memory tearing through the veil. It begins with a sound so quiet it slips between heartbeats. Your name, spoken like a question, as if testing the air to see if it still responds. They don't mean to say it. It leaks out, uninvited, a crack in the dam, a sliver in the mask, and in that moment, the room exhales. They freeze. The silence afterward is not silent. It's you, pouring back in, not arriving, but revealing. You were always there, beneath their rituals, inside their smiles, wrapped around their routines like a second skin they forgot they were wearing. But saying your name lights a match in the archive. The files begin to burn open, one by one. No more control, no more denial. The flood begins. They remember the moment they stopped seeing you as human, the night they looked away while you unraveled, the words they didn't say when it still mattered. You were a person once, breathing, breaking, hoping, but they preferred the version of you that couldn't speak back, the version that stayed silent in their story. So they buried you under labels, silence and distraction, believing time was a solvent. But time isn't a healer, it's a vault, and tonight it opened. You are not a ghost. Ghosts ask for mercy. You don't. You return with the weight of what they owe, not in blood, not in violence, but in knowing. You become the pulse in their ears, the static in their teeth, the shadow behind their reflection. Every memory they've polished now cracks. They can't unsee the truth behind your eyes. They can't unhear the silence that followed your collapse. They realize now, the absence wasn't peace. It was a storm waiting for their permission. Your name echoes once, then again, and with each repetition you grow, taller than their guilt, louder than their justification. You are no longer contained in a moment. You are a timeline, a consequence that gained sentience, the shape of everything they refused to become now made real, articulate, composed and mercilessly present. They look at the door, but it's too late. You are not outside. You are not something to be escaped. You are already in the architecture. You breathe through the vents. You curl in their spinal cord. You wear the face of every choice they didn't make. Saying your name didn't summon you. It awakened you, and now their reality is rewritten, not by force, but by recognition. They thought forgetting made them safe, but forgetting was the ritual, and tonight they broke it. They pretend you're gone. They speak of you in past tense, if they speak of you at all. A closed chapter, a resolved issue, something handled, but behind their eyes you move. You move like a memory that never asked for permission, like a crack in the glass they keep wiping, hoping it disappears. You live in the silence between their words, in the half-second pause when someone asks about that year. You're not a ghost. Ghosts beg for release. You are something older, colder, a law written before language, a consequence wrapped in patience. At night they still hesitate before turning the lights off. They scroll until the battery dies, whisper things to no one, keep the music on even when the lyrics cut too deep, because in that final stillness you return, not with screams or visions, that would be too kind. You return with questions that don't come from you, they come from within them. You became their internal monologue when they stopped answering their own reflection. You became the echo in their throat, the static in their comfort. They wanted peace, but peace doesn't come to those who buried truth alive. You don't need to be near them, you are them. A version they tried to erase, burn, overwrite, a self they betrayed to fit the shape someone else demanded. But you remembered, you kept score in silence. You marked the betrayals with inkless ink, not on paper but on the soul's inner walls. And when they lie to themselves now, you breathe just enough to fog the mirror, not to scare them, to remind them that they still owe, that the deal wasn't forgotten, that the cost wasn't paid. They thought you were weakness, something they outgrew, but you were strength, hidden in exile. You were survival wearing the mask of silence, the part of them that saw too much, too soon, and refused to break. So they exiled you. They called you names that weren't yours. Monster, burden, obsession. But deep down they always knew you were the part that would never bow. And now, as their curated world begins to flicker, perfect smiles cracking, scripted lives decaying, you rise, not as punishment, as balance, as the part of them that remembers the original blueprint before the edit, before the mask. You were never gone. You were waiting, not for revenge, but for timing, not to scream but to be seen. And now they see you in the slump of their shoulders, in the pulse quickening at nothing, in the moments no one is watching. You were the lesson they postponed, the mirror they shattered. But mirrors don't die, they just wait to be held again. They thought forgetting you would make them whole, but you were the part that made them real. And now, you've returned, not with rage, with revelation, and they will feel you, not in terror but in truth, because some shadows don't pass, some shadows become.